let's just throw this out and see where it goes. So first question, I think maybe to Adrian, how were the employers identified for this project?
The employers were identified, as I said, through just looking at the employer database that we have here as a Workforce Development Board, tapping into our chambers, our other business partners, as well as just picking up the phone. If there was a job that we saw that was either on one of the job boards or in a newspaper, we would pick up the phone and call the employer and tell them about Platform to Employment and tell them what an opportunity they had to hire a great individual, and they can do it with minimal cost up front, and a person who was ready to contribute immediately.
Great. This next question comes in. Can the cost per person vary, and can it be done for less, I guess is the intent of the question. We started with 100 and kind of assembled the budget per unit cost.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can start anywhere that you are. I think the first and most important thing is to get started. The $6,000, again, we threw some figures together at that point to see how much it would cost to take someone through an 8-week period. And again, we paid whatever the position cost, so we didn't know if people were going to start at a lower hourly salary or a larger yearly salary. Just want to be prepared for that. Some cost $6,000, some may have cost $3,000. It was a moving target depending on the individual.
This next question is for Joe. What kind of response have you received? Do people recognize you in the grocery store, and are you sort of a local celebrity, or how has your life changed since 60 Minutes?
I'm certainly not a local celebrity. That's not. It hasn't changed that way. There's been a lot more phone calls to return, a lot more emails, a lot more mailing. I think the most important thing that I can say in response to that, the outpouring of support all across this nation, the thousands and thousands of 99ers. The folks that we're talking about here, and we'll put the celebrity issue out of it because that doesn't mean anything to me. I'm well beyond that point in my life. The 99ers who saw this as a vehicle for hope, they were the best part of this thing, and I tried to read as much of their letters and emails. I returned as many as I could, and I'm sure I probably returned one in every 500 or 1,000 that came in, but it was just to get a flavor of what was going on here. The response has overwhelmed us. There's no question. We thought we were prepared, and I think we did everything we could, but it created thousands. But I'd look at it as a bunch of ripples, because it's coast to coast, it is deep, it has come from business leaders, it's come from foundation leaders, it's come from labor leaders, it's come from employment experts, and it's come from just plain good old citizens, just people that want to do the right thing. I am so pleased with the response, and I feel so wonderful that so many great people came forward. And we're going to give everybody who wants to do something here something to do.
Great. One question comes in about how many staff were dedicated to this initiative, and I guess that would be workplace staff, not the partners. All had various roles, whether it be Chris's staff. But first, we'll start with Adrian. How many staff sort of supported this effort?
I mean, it really did take a village, so there's a piece of all of us, but I think in terms of full-time staff, we had one individual that was fully dedicated to Platform to Employment and reached out to all the other staff that were here if, for job leads and kind of just hit the ground and working with the individuals that were in the program.
Great. This question's for Chris. Chris, someone wants to know how many hours per week was this classroom-based training?
The number of hours per week was, we did it I think 3 days a week, and there was classroom hours that were probably 3 to 6 hours a day, given the availability of resources, facility, etc. But there was also the ability for the participants on their own. We had homework assignments, we had a couple of group assignments where they would get together outside of class. One example was we did a research assignment. We gave out examples of 5 companies in the region, and we really rejuvenated their ability to go out and find out what they needed to know about a company. Where were they located? What was their product line? Who were their competitors? So that when they got into a interview situation, they could talk intelligently. So the number of hours were fairly rigid in terms of in-class, methodically go through the instructions, but there was a lot of flexibility for the participants to do work outside class, and we always had our phones on to answer any questions or concerns that they might have.
Great. This next question is for Nancy. Someone wants to know what clinical inventory was used for the assessment.
A brief symptom inventory called PSI. That was a paper and pencil inventory in addition to then a standard 1-hour interview that did a mental status assessment along with a coping skills and life stressors assessment.
Great, great. This next question, and this is something I know we've had experience with, did employers want to check credit, and was this an issue for placements?
We did have one employer that did want to check credit, and actually someone did not get employment because of that. It's unfortunate that has happened. You know, if you're out of work for 2 years, you're bound to have less than stellar credit. But they did not, other than that one employer, there wasn't another one that asked for a person's credit background.
Great. This one may be for Joe. How did you keep bureaucracy out of the way?
Well, I didn't turn to government for money. The money that we raised was intended to be used on the wage side. And let me tell you why it was important in this case to go private as opposed to public. There's a lot of companies that if the subsidy is going to be coming from a government source, don't even want to talk to you. They view that as something that's going to be imposing, that there will be lots of regulations and follow-up and things. Be that true or not, the general perception is that many different businesses will close the door if that's where the resources come from. So the $6,000 is what we thought the cost would be on the wage side, and that's why when we sold 100 units, we sold each of them for that amount. Now, to be fair, they used the services of our one-stops as well, and there's public dollars in that side, and they were all qualified because they were long-term unemployed and they'd all come through the Connecticut employment system. So to some extent, they use some of the services, like even things like working on your resume preparations and a host of other things. So it was a private-public kind of a partnership. The private element of it was kind of unique and different, but I think it served a purpose, and I think the message that it serves. I don't think I want to come out of this that somehow every community has to go out and raise money that would be used on the wage subsidy. It is more important that the experiences here make their way into the system, the workforce development system. It means we change the regs, we change the way we do business, but we look at it from the standpoint of what worked here and how could we make it part of the culture of government-administered workforce operations.
Great. I'm going to combine two questions here. I think this is for Adrian. How were participants screened, and was the criteria long-term employment, or do we look at other things like net worth and education?
The individuals were screened. First, there was an online application that they filled out on our website that asked a variety of questions, not only demographic information, but also, you know, I think one of the key questions that we asked was, how long do you spend on your job search each week, and what methods do you use to search for work? And, you know, we wanted to look to make sure that individuals had some level of motivation. So some people put, you know, I spent 2 hours a week on my job search. So that kind of gave us an indication that person probably wasn't, you know, as motivated as the others, and, you know, would they be able to get through such a rigorous 5 weeks with career teams. So that was one level of screening. After we got through that, we brought individuals in and did a personal interview. Again, kind of to delve a little deeper to make sure that they had the motivation. Was their net worth? Absolutely not. We didn't really consider that at all in terms of whether they were, we were going to select them into the program. It just happened that individuals came from a wide variety of backgrounds in terms of finances. Education, We wanted to make sure there was a diverse group, absolutely, because we felt that people could learn from one another, you know, people who had rich educations and those that may not have had as a strong educational background. But what you would find and what we found is that each cohort melded together quite well. And regardless of your education level, they were all at the same table and at the same place. They had been unemployed for 2 years. So they found that their common interests kind of helped, and they actually started to share referrals. And, you know, we had one guy who was an IT guy that was helping people with computer skills at the table during the training in the first cohort. So we found that that worked well.
Great. This next question, I'm going to answer it because it has to deal with my domain, which is, please discuss workforce intelligence and how you used it. We're very fortunate here at the workplace to have access to a lot of toys, I like to call them. Those toys are tools that we use to assess market segments, growing trends, looking at analysis of occupational growth. One tool we use consistently is, I'm not going to give them an advertisement, but EMSI out of Moscow, Idaho. And we're able to project job growth in very specific occupations. So that was certainly, I mean, part of our mandate is to create jobs and put people into careers that are growing. And while it certainly plays a role in our day-to-day operations, we were market-led on this particular thing where we were responding to those employers. But guess what? Once we have those relationships with employers and we know that they look to us and we can access our tools and say, hey, you know, we see that you have customer service representatives. What are you doing to address the demand that's coming down the pike for those occupations? And that rolls into leveraging our other programs and services. So that's a great question. Thank you. The other question that just came in and is how much more difficult would it be to recreate this program in a rural area? Rural America. 99ers for sure.
Well, it would probably be more difficult the more rural you are, because we did have to rely upon business and the foundation area for some of the private sector support, and you might be affected in terms of the diversity of jobs that are available or the number of jobs. The more rural, sometimes the more severe that the recession has been. So it might be more difficult, but I keep getting back to that starting point. Everything has got to begin somewhere. And I think what you need to take away from this is that clearly those roundtables were a catalyst to bringing about the community support, the consensus of the community that we need to do something for this group, and we need to come together and everybody put their best foot forward on it. So I can't answer the question with a sense of being exact, but I would assume it would be more difficult, but you can still kick the ball rolling here by using the roundtable, and I assure you that will become a magnet for bringing out the best of folks in your community.
I add something too, is that what was so helpful in another really helpful piece of this program was the group work and that people were no longer isolated. And I would think in rural communities that would even be more severe. And so that's a piece that is an incredible value for this kind of program, but it might mean there needed some kind of outreach and helping people with transportation. But really the community and the connection with others is essential to the success.
Great. This next question comes in. I'm just going to read it as it states. If the money raised was for wages, how were training and mental health supported, funded? Fund supported. So I don't think, we don't want to say that the wages went for all of the training, or for all, the money raised wasn't 100% for the wages, correct?
No, it was not 100%. We assumed that there would be some of the placements that would require any subsidy and some that would require less than the 8 weeks. So we went out, we did a contract with behavioral group, and I don't recall the exact amount of it, but we paid for that out of the money that we raised. And there were other expenses as well that we did have sufficient money. Now again, we started off with estimates and we kind of guided it cohort by cohort as we did proceed, much to our surprise, the number of companies that just did a direct hire. was greater than we had anticipated, so it gave us more flexibility to do other things.